Hello, we're live. How we doing? Afternoon, YouTube. Let's see, there's a couple people in here. You may also notice that that's not Josh.
I am not Josh.
He is not Josh. Confirmed.
Confirmed. I am Matt. If you listen to the episode where we recast the original trilogy, I was the heathen that came up with that idea.
That was him. His name is also in big orange letters underneath him, so that helps in identification.
Oh, yeah. My name is Matt.
Yes. All right. I am going to start pre-rolling the record. Okay. And I might as well get the articles up, huh?
Probably be helpful.
For the news. All right. I'm ready.
Sure.
Okay. That should be enough pre-roll time. So, are you ready to start off?
Sure.
All
Let's
right.
do it.
Hit the intro.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Welcome to episode 34 of From a Certain Point of View. As you can tell, I'm not Josh, and Josh is not kicking this episode off because Josh is not here. Josh is on vacation, but I am Adam, and I am joined
And
by.
I am Matt. Sorry, I jumped the gun there on that one.
No worries. We're doing this on the fly. But yeah, that is Matt. That is my brother. Matt's joining me for this episode. Like I said, Josh is off celebrating an anniversary or something like that. He got married, so he has to celebrate that once a year. So, but seriously, Josh, I hope you have a great time, and looking forward to having you back in the co-host chair next week. But until then, I've had a pretty light Star Wars week this week. I watched I watched the Mandalorian documentary yesterday, the Disney Gallery, the last episode of that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, I had some fun looking into some Star Wars Squadrons trailers and then some deep dives in the EA Play event. But other than that, really, I haven't done a whole lot of Star Wars this week. Matt, have you done anything Star Wars this week?
Yeah, this was actually a pretty heavy Star Wars week for me.
Nice.
I guess I'm balancing it out for you. My wife Tony and I rewatched Rise of Skywalker this week, as
Oh,
well
cool.
as rewatched Solo. And the reason why we rewatched them is I've been listening to a new podcast recently called Newcomers, which is a podcast where two comedians, Nicole Byer and Lauren Lapkus, watch Star Wars for the very first time in their entire lives, and then
Oh,
they
nice.
have a guest. They have a guest on. They talk about what they liked, what they didn't like. And then throughout the short podcast run, they also rank the movies as they like them, and it just put me in mood to watch some of the movies. So we did that. I am almost done with that podcast series. I think I have 3 episodes left. If you haven't listened to it, it's very
Okay.
good. Um, Forewarned, they don't like everything about Star Wars, but a lot of the guests they have on give a good point of view of why things went the way they did, and really enlighten them. So it's actually been kind of interesting seeing them become casual Star Wars fans over the course of however long they filmed this.
Matt,
podcast
I know
series.
last time you said you were on a social media blackout, and maybe you still are, but I don't think anybody out there likes everything about Star Wars.
I know. And
Okay.
yes, I'm still mostly on a
I don't know
social
if you've
media
been on
blackout.
Twitter lately, but
No.
it's not universally loved by all of even fans. but
Yeah,
but
I
that's
realize that.
yeah, and we've said this before. That's where we got our start for this show, is that idea that we can all not like everything but still chat about it, and it sounds like that's what that podcast is about.
Mostly, yeah. And it's probably the best part about it is the if you ever watched the show Nailed It on Netflix, the host of that, Nicole Byer, is one of the hosts on this podcast, and she cannot pronounce any name correctly within the Star Wars universe. So, listening to her read the synopsis of any of the movies that they watched, it gets to be quite amusing.
Nice. Sounds like a good time. I might have to check that one
Yeah.
out. Cool. So we did have a poll this week. That was put out on the 17th, and what we asked you this week was the first trailer for Star Wars Squadrons was released this week. If you had to choose one, which ship would you pilot? And we also opened up the comments for other answers, but it didn't really matter. X-Wing took that pretty handily with 58.3% of the vote. Coming up second was a TIE Fighter, 22.2%, and then A-Wing and U-Wing each split at 9.7%. And then in the comments, like I said, we did open those up for other answers. B-Wing and Y-Wing both came in with 3 extra votes, and TIE Reaper had one additional vote. Matt, I don't know if you got a chance to vote in it, but if you did,
not.
what'd you pick? And and if you didn't, then
I would love to fly a TIE Fighter.
yeah, okay. I chose X-Wing, a good old hardy standard X-Wing. So,
Well, I
so
guess
yeah,
that shows where we lie in our alliance to the Force.
yeah, you Imperial, you imp. Anyway, this week's show, we've got some news to talk about. We're actually going to be talking about news for, honestly, probably a good chunk of this show, because we've got a healthy amount of news articles to go through, and then we're actually going to use one that started some rumors here as our main topic, and that's going to be the rumor that started floating this week about a live action connected universe coming to Disney Plus. In Star Wars, connecting shows like The Mandalorian with some upcoming rumored shows. So we're going to chat about that. And then we also have the last episode of Disney Gallery to talk about. That was called Connections. So without further ado, Matt, if you're ready, we'll just jump right into the news.
Let's do it.
Well, you want the bad news or the really bad news?
As everyone's getting ready to open up after the coronavirus pandemic shutdowns and everything of that nature, theaters especially are starting to look for some ideas to entice people to come back in and sit down and watch a movie again. And this actually came out a few days ago, but then I actually found out some more information. But this was actually centered around the UK, that the Disney was opening up viewings of a 4K edition of The Empire Strikes Back for UK cinemas. And I've actually found out recently that as far at least Cinemark theaters in the US are going to be doing Empire Strikes Back as well, along with a handful of other films. Have you heard about this, Matt? And would you be interested in seeing a 4K version of Empire Strikes Back in the theaters?
I've heard about this. This is very exciting. I know that AMC is also opening up. I believe they said about 450 theaters sometime in July. And they also confirmed not what movies they'll be showing, but they did confirm that they'll be showing not only new releases, but also classic favorite films. So I would not be surprised if AMC jumps on the Empire Strikes Back 4K bandwagon as well.
Yeah, it seems like that's kind of the one that Disney's offering up, and that's a grade A one to offer up, honestly. And I wouldn't be surprised if, not, like you said, not only AMC but also Regal and some of the other major
Right.
chains jump on that too, if that's available to all of them. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back was definitely one that I want to jump on. Um, Cinemark released their whole schedule of these, and there's all kinds of stuff on there, like Back to the Future and The Matrix and some of the Dark Knight trilogy films, and I want to go see so many of these. But yeah, Empire is probably a must for me to check out. So.
Yeah, that's definitely would be on the top of my list as well as Back to the Future, but that's a whole different conversation that we do not have time for.
Sounds good. Staying within the TV and movie universe, we've also got some information this week. Rumor as well that there's a possible spin-off series to the Clone Wars in development at Lucasfilm Animation. And this would actually be centered around the Bad Batch from the season 7 of the Clone Wars. The Bad Batch being the group of 4 clone troopers that reach kind of rejects, Kaminoan rejects, more or less. And we don't have a whole lot of other details on what this might be. I don't know if we're going to be looking at a possible, what the Bad Batch started doing after the Clone Wars, if they survived that, maybe what they did during the Clone Wars. I don't know. But so we'll have to wait and see if that is for real. Do you think that's something you'd want to jump into, man? I know you haven't jumped into a lot of the TV shows yet, but you think you'd check out this group of misfit clones?
Yeah, I probably would. I read a little bit about it as well, a little few of the rumors, and it sounds like it could be a little bit of a mini series, not a full-fledged multi-season series, but it'll be interesting to see what is actually going to come of this if they do decide to make a multi-season series, how that will actually come about, or if it's just a mini series, what kind of storyline they decide to tell with a limited amount of time to tell it.
Yeah, indeed. Moving on, again within the TV universe, it seems like we're always talking about this Kenobi series, and we're going to talk about it a little more again, because Ewan McGregor himself gave an interview to Ace Universe, and he started talking about some of the plans going around for the Kenobi series. What that might look like, and one of the things that he mentioned seems to confirm that we're going to have more use of the volume. The quote that he gave specifically here is, I think I'm going to enjoy it much more. The prequels were all blue screen and green screen, and it was hard to imagine. But nowadays, I think things have moved on so much, and I think a lot of what you see is going to be what we see on the set. I don't know if you've seen the behind the scenes of the Mandalorian series, but they employ that incredible screen. It's pretty amazing. It makes you feel like you're in the place. It's going to feel realer for us as actors. And I think we'll be using some of that technology on our show. It's pretty big news, I think, and not only because the volume has been a success and it's going to be ported into other series, but that also probably means that they're building another volume, and this one probably over in the UK, since they do also a lot of filming over there as well. So, did you get a chance to check out the Disney Gallery episode about the volume and see what this is all about?
I haven't seen the full episode, but I have
Okay.
seen bits and pieces.
Yeah.
As just mini clips online. I kind of think that this is a no-brainer.
Oh yeah, it has to be.
It works so well for the Mandalorian series. Right. Everybody on the series has stated that it made not only working in a fictional place easier, but more fun. Carl Weathers had said that it looked like they were actually in that lava river.
Yeah, that tunnel. Right.
The tunnel.
Yeah, and I loved that. I remember he said he could, you could see the end of the tunnel getting bigger, but then you could look behind him and see the end of the tunnel getting smaller. So there's that perspective there as well, which is pretty amazing.
So I think it's really a no-brainer to do this, and a lot of complaints about the prequels kind of can get pushed towards everything being done on green screen and the actors having the difficult time imagining where they are and how they can react to their surroundings, and that can completely be taken away with the volume.
Which is interesting because we always go back to that green screen thing as being a negative, like a drawback. It's almost got a negative connotation anymore. But now we're championing something like this, which is kind of green screen 2.0, right? It's still not acting in front of physical process. I mean, there's still physical aspects to the set, definitely, but
it's a green screen without a green screen.
Yeah, right. And like you mentioned, the the pros here far outweigh the cons because you're actually in that universe then, and like you said, like Carl said, like Ewan is saying here, it just makes you feel like you're there, you know.
Yeah, and whatever story they decide to tell, as long as they take the direction that Dave Filoni and John Favreau have kind of laid the path for, I know it would be a fantastic tool to enhance whatever story they decide to tell with the Kenobi series.
Yeah, definitely. So we're wrapping up TV there, and now let's move into some video game news because we had some pretty big video game news this week. Last week we mentioned that Star Wars Squadrons was real and that it was getting some reveals in the following week, which it did. Monday we got our first teaser trailer look at this thing, and the teaser trailer was all cinematic. Purely cinematic stuff. There was no gameplay. There was actually really hardly any details about what the game actually was at that point. But we did get the teaser trailer. So starting from that point in the week, did you watch the teaser trailer when it dropped?
I didn't watch
did
it
you
when
watch
it dropped,
it close? Yeah, closer.
Yeah. I watched it maybe a day or so afterwards.
Sure.
It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It definitely takes one of the major aspects of any Star Wars movie, or any post World War I movie, and looks like it gives you a very fun gameplay to be a part of that action.
Yeah, and then moving on later in the week, EA had their EA Play Live event. You know, this pretty much was around the time that E3 usually happens. We mentioned that last week. But EA had their EA Play Live event later in the week, which is kind of where they showcase some of these things. And Star Wars Squadrons did get some time on EA Play Live, and I think it was about a 6-minute, maybe 8-minute, somewhere in that time frame of actual gameplay. More details about what we're seeing, about what we're getting. There is a single player campaign. It's probably on the short side. I would say probably somewhere in the realm of like 5 hours ish. It would be my expectation. So there is that single player storyline. It honestly, I could see that being as like a training thing, like getting you ready to jump into the multiplayer, you know. So that short story, I think, would probably just kind of get you introduced to some of the aspects of being in a cockpit and what all that information means. Because one of the things that we found out was that your graphical display is like a cockpit display. You know, you're not getting numbers on kind of like a regular shooter where it shows like your ammo count and how much you have left and shows you all these other things and numbers. You're actually reading gauges and things like that in your X-Wing, right? So we saw that in action. It seems like it's all first person view. There's no like behind the ship views or third person type thing. There is the main aspect of this is going to be multiplayer. There's it's basically a 5v fight. 5v5 dogfight. But there's also longer what's called fleet battles. fleet battles are like kind of like multi-stage, and if you've played the new Battlefront games, you're kind of familiar with this already. If you've played any of the Battlefield games, you're familiar with this already. But basically, you start off with one stage, and then you move on to the next stage of a battle, and then you finish on the last stage of a battle. Another very interesting thing that we saw were there's some customization options. We got, from what we were told, over 50 different ship upgrades, and it's, from what we know so far, those can all be earned in game without microtransactions, and that's been talked about by EA and by developers on this game a couple different times this week. So it seems like there is no microtransactions in this game, which is pretty cool. And it's coming October 2nd for PC, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One. So, also coming to PS5 and Xbox Series X at a later date, but we don't know that date yet. So, pretty cool details there. I was a little hesitant after the teaser trailer, just because I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know what we were getting as far as if there was anything single player, if we were going to be having to pay way more money through microtransactions and stuff like that. After Thursday or Friday, I was pretty much totally sold on this game.
Yeah, this game looks really cool. The only real complaint that I have initially is with the gameplay you see, and it's compatible with fully compatible with VR.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yep.
It actually makes me wish that I could be in cockpit and reach down and flip the switches and push the buttons myself.
Yeah. There's not been much that's made me want to really think about getting VR, but with this, and then also with there's the new Batu VR experience, and then there's the Vader Immortal. There's just 3 different Star Wars things now that are pretty compelling for VR.
Yeah.
So I am very much looking forward, because this is actually compatible with a joystick on PC. So you can bet that I'll be getting a joystick and plugging it in like it's 1997. So, very excited. I'm very excited now for Squadrons after we saw the EA Play Live event, and after we got all those details. I'm super excited for this game. This definitely feels like the spiritual successor to Rogue Squadron now. So
yeah, this looks like it will be a blast, and like I was telling you before we went on the air, we were talking about Rogue Squadron and Rogue Squadron 2.
Yep.
It reminded me so much of that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right. I was going to say something, now I'm blanking, so now I get to edit this. That's why this is live. If I can't think of it, we're just going to have to move on. So.
Post forward.
Yep. It was something about the UI and being in a cockpit, but I can't remember what it was. Oh well. Yeah, so Star Wars Squadron looks pretty sick so far. I'm very much looking forward to get some more information on that. I have heard that this is looking like a budget title, so around the, from what I'm hearing, like the $40 mark. I don't know if that's been confirmed anywhere, but that's what I've been reading. So a little bit less than a regular $60 game, and which is probably good, I think, for what this is, because I mean you don't have much of a single player campaign there, but and then you're mainly focusing on multiplayer. So I mean, $40 I think is a pretty good price for that. So, I know you don't do a lot of gaming anymore, Matt, but would you be excited about something like Squadrons? Do you like that idea?
I do like the idea. What I think would be really, really fun, and I don't know, and I don't think it would ever happen, but if you remember us doing when we were much younger, NASCAR experience, which is set up
at Daytona,
at Daytona, which is set up at a lot of NASCAR tracks around the country. If Disney wanted to try to see if they could do a similar one
I,
in
I have to
Anaheim
look
or
back.
in Disney World and
Mm,
have a actual, even if it was just a TIE fighter and an X-wing, where you jump in and you play the game within there. Um, that would be, I say, a fan service. I know that they would charge a lot of money for it, but if they could be able to adapt this to an experience like that, I think would be a real winner. But even playing it at your local machine still looks like it would be a lot of fun.
yeah, I have to look. There was some type of arcade game that came out a few years ago, and I can't remember what it was about. I don't know if it was like an X-wing or maybe it was a pod racing type thing. That was kind of like that, where you were getting into and I don't think it was VR either. I think it was like a screen in front of you, but I think you were getting into
Yeah,
like a cockpit type thing, and I forget what exactly it was. Um, but yeah, I could see them doing some type of VR experience around being a pilot. I think that would be a good idea.
yeah, I think it would be a blast.
Yeah, agreed. So, on to some kind of bummer news, but Star Wars Celebration has officially been canceled. That news came out on the 15th, a little earlier this week. So, uh, Celebration was originally set to take place in August, the 27th through the 30th in Anaheim, and that's been pushed back, actually way back until 2022, August 18th through 21st in 2022. It was I mean, I wasn't quite sure if this was going to be actually fully canceled, postponed. I would actually call this canceled and just rescheduled until 2022. Postponed. That's a long postponement. Um, but yeah, it was probably coming. Not a surprise. Pretty much expected. But I guess hey, that means I have 2 years to plan a way to get to Anaheim. So
Yeah, it's sad. It's not surprising at all. Coming from where I come from, I work in the events industry. It is not surprising at all that this is canceled, especially with the draw that it would get. Um, Even if everything is back to normal by then, there's still a hesitation with uh, a large crowd. So I'm not surprised at all. It is a bummer. I am kind of surprised that they pushed it back 2 years instead of just 1 year.
yeah, I was actually thinking. Josh and I talked about this last week, but Josh was maybe thinking like around April of 2021. Um, and I think what they're actually doing here is I think they're going for like the on and off years between D23 and Celebration, and so I think they're just kind of starting just to jump into that schedule. To be honest,
Yeah,
because I do believe D23 is 2021 in August, if I'm not mistaken. So that would keep them on their like every other year schedule. So, but yeah, 2022 I was a little surprised by. So, but like you said, hardly surprising. Still a
right.
bummer. And wrapping up the news segment this week, we got more information about a brand new book coming that Josh had speculated on this a while ago, and it was a little surprising that it was this late. But we talked about this last week, I believe. The Empire Strikes Back from a Certain Point of View, and we got some authors this week. So the whole lineup of authors includes Tom Engelberger, S.A., and I'm going to mess this one up, Chakraborty, I believe, Mike Chen, Adam Christopher, Zareda Cordova, Delilah S. Dawson, Tracy Dion, Seth Dickinson, Alexander Freed, Jason Fry, Christy Golden, Hank Green, Rob Hart, E.K. Johnston, Lydia Kang, Michael Kogi, R.F. Kwang, C.B. Lee, Mackenzie Lee, John Jackson Miller, Michael Mordecai, Daniel Jose O'Dare, Mark Oshiro, Amy Ratcliffe, Beth Rivas, Lilliam Rivera, Kevin Scott, Emily Strutsky, Karen Strong, Anatol, Catherine M. Valente, Austin Walker, Martha Wells, Django Wexler, Kirsten White, Gary Whitta, Brittany N. Williams, Charles Yu, and Jim Zub. That is a heck of a list of authors. Some really well-known Star Wars authors on there. We also got a couple quick synopses on some of these stories. Austin Walker's story, he will write about Dengar in IG-88, an unlikely and at-odds pair of bounty hunters in search of Han Solo. Hank Green's story will chronicle the life of a naturalist caring for tauntauns living on Hoth. Tracy Dion is writing a tale from the point of view of the Cave of Evil on Dagobah. She also apparently said on Twitter that they allowed her to get really weird and dark with this tale, so that sounds pretty cool. Martha Wells will explore the world of the Ugnaught clan that dwell in the depths of Cloud City. Marco Shiro is going to tell of the Wampa's tale of loss and survival. And Seth Dickinson will question the cost of serving the Empire aboard a bridge of doomed Imperial starship. Any of those stories catch your eye, Matt?
Yeah. The Austin Walker one about Dengar
and
and
IG-88.
IG-88.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Tracy Dion's tale about the Cave of Evil. I'm all aboard.
Yeah. That one's
especially for that where she.
Saying that she's getting weird and dark. Yeah. These from a certain point of view stories are the place to get weird, because they
are.
Yeah.
I've read a little bit of the first book. I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but I am enjoying it.
Yeah. It's a good read.
It is a good read.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling you before it started, I am not aware of any of these authors. I was saying that the first one had a few somewhat popular comedians of Ben Acker and Ben Blacker and Will Wheaton.
Yeah.
So I was going through, and I don't know any of these people, which kind of gives me a clean slate. Not have any type of expectation of what their writing will be.
Yeah.
So
some of these people are
reading
pretty big Star Wars authors, and you just correct me if I'm wrong. You just really don't get into the Star Wars books that much.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is totally fine. It's totally fair. So.
There's more time in the day.
Man, I've been trying to catch up on Star Wars books, and it's hard, even just going through and listening to these quickly. So yeah, I totally know what you mean. It's honestly hard to keep up with that as you go, So, Alberto from Radio Rebellion is in chat, and he asks us a question. I wanted to kind of get your take on this. Do we think that there'll be a virtual Star Wars convention of some sort this year? I think no. I think that you'll get some announcements peppered out, kind of spread out throughout the rest of the summer, and maybe a little more in August. I think you'll start to get some of those confirmations that they were planning to give, because now that we know they're not going to have an official convention to announce these things at until 2022, unless they show up at D23 next year. They have to get some information out here about these things at some point, definitely before August of 2021. So I would expect some smaller scale announcements, maybe some reveals, kind of like we saw with Squadrons this week, where things just kind of slowly get out there and then they put out information about it. Supposedly on Monday, I think it was Kevin Scott was teasing some information about Project Luminous, or High Republic announcement coming on Monday. I think that's what we're going to be seeing, is stuff like that happening. I think we're going to be seeing these smaller little announcements that come at kind of random times throughout the rest of the summer. But Matt, do you think that they'll do, I know like E3 is doing an online, or San Diego Comic-Con is a good example. They're doing like full online versions of their shows. Do you think Star Wars will do that with Celebration? Do you think they'll do something different? This is kind of your realm too. Matt does a lot of like live shows, so this is kind of his realm.
Yeah, I work in the events industry, so I work with mainly on the corporate side, but doing meetings and events and conventions. So I live in the hotel and convention center world. A lot of industry events this year, when they canceled, went into a full virtual realm. Some of them did better than others. I think Comic-Con probably would do very well on a virtual side, minus the exhibit floor, which kind of is one of the biggest draws of Comic-Con. So that's a little bit of a letdown.
It's kind of the same with
very big
E3 too,
letdown.
where you're there.
It'll
on,
be
on
interesting
the
to see
floor.
how E3 is, and how they handle that.
Mm-hmm.
With Celebration being postponed, hard postponed.
Yeah.
I don't think that they'll do a virtual convention this year. Just because they already put a date to it. They already said that it's not happening this year. It's going to happen next year, or in 2 years, I should say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that if it was,
they didn't do that, if they said that it's not happening, then I think that gives a little bit more reason to speculate that they'll do a virtual one. But since they did give a firm date to it, I don't think they will. I agree with you. I think they'll do some surprise releases, some surprise announcements throughout the next couple weeks, months. But I think a virtual event could go really well, but I just don't see it in the cards.
And kind of piggybacking on what you said there, I think if there was a virtual event planned, I think that they would have maybe said something like "stay tuned," or maybe just come out and said, we're going to be doing this virtually. But yeah, like you said, the fact that they put a date on it and said, no, this is not happening this year, I think that kind of answers that. So
yeah. Not to say I wouldn't love to watch the panel discussions.
Oh yeah, I always geek out for that type of stuff.
To it.
Yeah. Anytime that stuff is online, I'll watch all of it. D23 doesn't matter. So yeah.
And they theoretically could get a larger initial reaction from it rather than having it live. I know there's monetary things to have it live and everything, but they could have a bigger draw if they do it virtually. But like I said, I just don't see that happening, at least for Celebration.
And honestly, I mean, there are ways for them to do this virtually and still make some money on it.
There are,
whether it's through advertising, whether it's through something like Twitch, where you can, as a channel, I'm sure that they could get people to subscribe to them on Twitch. That type of stuff. So they could do it in a way where they could recoup some costs, but I just don't see that. I don't see that happening. I don't think.
Right.
So. Well, that about wraps up the news section. So we can move on to Disney Gallery if you're ready.
I am.
My disappointment in your performance cannot be overstated.
The last episode of Disney Gallery, which was called Connections, premiered yesterday on Disney Plus. This episode was basically all about ties, connections, as the episode was so aptly named, from The Mandalorian to other parts of Star Wars, movies, video games, even TV shows, and more. And one of the first things that they started talking about, and this was Jon Favreau really wanted to talk about this. I was really proud of his Wilro Hood ice cream maker, which was pretty cool. I didn't catch that right off the bat, but very clearly that was the ice cream maker that they transformed into the. They had the name for it, and I'm blanking on the name. But whatever was carrying the Beskar steel. So that was pretty cool, and that kind of led into the bigger discussion of this episode, which was basically using lesser known parts of the universe and bringing them to the forefront. And then we just kind of got, for a little while, we got just these kind of flash, almost like replays of the one segment title of this episode was called Deep Cuts, and that's basically what we got through a lot of this episode. Favreau starts off by saying something to the effect of that they're doing fan service creatively, which was an interesting way to put that. I have never been one to mind fan service. I pay my money for a ticket to go see a movie, and I expect some fan service. Some stuff to geek out about. But they definitely did fan service pretty differently, I think, in this show. And a couple of the examples that they gave right off the bat, I'll just kind of go through it and list some of these. But they talked about the Kenner troop transport. That was, I believe, episode. I think it was episode 7, if I remember right. It could have been episode 8. But anyway, the Kenner troop transport, which was a toy that never actually made it into a film until now, and they talked about the Force Unleashed incinerator trooper. There's this really great story about the Ugnaught, speaking a pig language, which Favreau discussed, about how they ended up having like 15 minutes of Jawa and then this pig language, and it was all subtitles, and they just realized that they can't do it this way. No one's gonna want to watch.
And Dave Filoni chiped in and said that it was very early on in the shooting, and it was the first live action thing he ever did, and he was thinking, like, I don't understand any of this. Is this how live action's actually filmed? Like this,
right.
this doesn't seem like it's gonna work, but John is all in on this scene.
Yeah, it was good. It was a really funny episode. There was a lot of really good little anecdotes about that type of stuff. But then once again, we just kind of got these series of images, and it was some of them were things like banthas that we see through the macro binoculars. You go back to New Hope, and then you see that again in the I think it was episode 5 of the series with Fennec Shand and Toro Calican. Then we see the ATST. We see Mando's gun from the holiday special. Another one of those little funny anecdotes that Favreau was so proud to bring this up to George Lucas.
And he shot it down right away.
I had nothing to do with that. Great little story there. But they showed the mouse droid, and then we got the Darksaber and some little a better little look at Favreau talking about him being pre-Vizsla, and how they brought the Darksaber into this world and actually making it look good and things like that. But then we move on to the section of the episode called Homage. And this is where we got a pretty cool look at the cantina scene from episode 5 and just how much detail they brought in from episode 4.
Completely rebuilding it.
Yeah, to totally rebuilding this thing, to looking at colors and where they are in the set and everything, and just making sure that it's perfect, really cool stuff. Mark Hamill voiced EV-99, which I did not know, and
I did not know
I don't
either.
know that anyone knew that until just now. I mean, I was seeing news outlets kind of break this story this past week, yesterday, about Mark Hamill voicing a robot in The Mandalorian. I think Josh and I talked about this on the show a few months ago after Mark Hamill came out and definitely said that he was done playing Luke. But I still think that you're going to see Mark Hamill do little things like this here and there.
Yeah, I completely agree. He just has this childlike personality whenever he seems to be on set.
Yeah.
Where he just gets engulfed in the stories, the sets, the props, the animatronics. I would be very surprised if he doesn't want to be on set.
Yeah.
In the future. And I'm sure he's going to have that itch where he wants to visit, and then when he's there, he may or may not do a voice for a small alien character or something.
Yeah, I can see that. I definitely think he'll do little cameos like this here and there. We got another look at R5 and at R5D4. about how he has been stuck on Tatooine this whole time. That was another one of those little, from a certain point of view, stories in the A New Hope
Yeah.
book. Pretty cool
And we
story
had
from
Dave
him,
Filoni making sure that
making sure that
his
he blew his,
modulator.
yeah, right,
Yeah.
yep, and adding that detail to him and all that stuff's really cool. But then a lot of actually the meat of this episode ended up being about the 501st, which was awesome. I thought because the 501st we found out last as the series was wrapping up, the 501st was a major part of that last episode, and we talked about Filoni talked a lot about how cool it was for them. So many times in this episode, Filoni reminded me how much just of a fan he is.
Yeah.
When
I
we
100% agree.
when we talked about the ice cream maker, and he told the story about how that happens at Celebration, and then we talked about this and about how he knows, he just knows so much about the fan experience on this stuff. He knows how much it means for people in the 501st, not just to have something that was, film used, but then for them, their own homemade armor that they put so much time into this becomes film used, and how cool that is for them.
Yeah.
He just knows so much about that stuff. He's so in tune, I think, with what we as fans look for, and what we want to see on screen. So, and
Yeah,
then
I completely agree.
yeah, we wrap up the episode with a look back at the pilot scene, and we get some good stories about how that all took place, and Dave deciding if he really wanted to jump into that cockpit. Which the cockpit, I was very excited to find out, is from the X-wing that's now sitting in Galaxy's Edge in Orlando.
It
So
is.
I have a little extra
They only had
motivation to get to
They only had to
Orlando.
modify it a little bit.
Yeah, they said that there was some type of bar, like a
There's
support bar that was in there to
support
help
bar going through the
steady
middle
it
to
for
help it.
storms. Yeah,
Yeah.
And
They had
they
to
had
take that out for a
and then-
seat in there.
yeah, and put it back in, but yeah,
Have
little
some sketchy scaffolding to actually be able to climb in there.
right. And, but yeah, now I'm a little extra motivated, like I said, to check that out and see this, the actual film used X-wing, which is pretty cool. I think Dave again said something about how it's crazy that there's no X-wings in California that they can.
Yeah, he said that
Yeah.
it was remarkable that they didn't have anything in Southern California, and
Right.
they had to kind of commandeer this
Yeah.
X-wing that was being shipped to Florida for a few days.
Yeah. So looking back on this episode, Matt, what was your favorite little connection that they mentioned?
I don't know if I had a singular favorite connection.
Okay.
The one line that really stuck out to me that I really enjoyed and I really liked was a line that Dave Filoni said that The Mandalorian, the entire series, was kind of like a story that you would recite yourself if you were a younger brother and your older brother had all the cool action figures and all you got was the quote unquote reject action figures, and somehow you got your hands on a Boba Fett that you repainted yourself, and then you created this story around those action figures you had. I think that was probably my favorite connection because it proves how much of a fan he was.
Yeah,
in my opinion, that he wanted to use all these. Him and John wanted to use all these characters, all these props, that maybe only had 3 seconds of screen time, if they had any screen time at all, and make a very good show out of it is remarkable.
Yeah. It's hard for me to pick out my favorite two. I really loved the Ugnaught story about the pig language thing and seeing that all play out.
That was very fun to listen to. Yeah.
I also loved the oh man, I'm gonna blank on the creature's name here too. But the oh man, I'm gonna have to look it up. I'll just edit this. Those two-legged things. Blurgs. Didn't even have to look it up. I also love the story about blurgs and how that ended up kind of being, what Dave has done in every series that he's touched so far, and
Yeah.
John came to him and he said, you can do blurgs in this, almost like he was doing him a favor of sorts. Yeah. So I love that. I think that this episode was great just for these little anecdotes like that. This was
Yeah.
almost like the geek out episode, right?
It really was. To kind of confirm all those moments that you saw something and you thought that it was this particular creature or this particular prop, and then to find out that it actually was, and you're right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely. So why do we think this all works so seamlessly together? Is it the objects, the creatures that they're using? Is it how they use them? Is it a bit of both? What do you? I mean, I kind of tend to think it's a bit of both. But what do you think?
I think it's
Or
a little
something
bit, a
else
bit of both,
completely? Or is it maybe
but
some other
I
thing
think it's
completely?
I think it's mostly how they use them, though.
Okay.
How they molded the stories. They didn't mold the stories around these characters, around these creatures, around these props. Um, they use them to, in my opinion, enhance the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
can see that.
I think that's how it works so seamlessly and works so well.
Hmm.
They were able to create a very good story, and then they were able to use um, creatures like the blurgs, or they were able to use an Ognaut to make it, or an IG unit to further the story along. Um, I think that's what made them work so well.
Yeah. Yep, I can see that totally. Uh, that kind of wraps up the Connections episode. Matt, do you have anything else to add about Connections before we move into Star Wars Connected Universe talk?
No, I don't think so.
All right, let's hit it.
Luke, you're going to find that many of the truths we cling to depend greatly on our own point of view.
I was originally going to cover this little rumor in the news section of the show, but decided to move it back to this main segment, and wanted to talk about this, go into this, kind of take a deep dive into the rumor that we have here. But earlier this week, some rumors started floating around there that Lucasfilm is looking to connect all of their Star Wars live action series together with a central story. This includes The Mandalorian, the Ahsoka series, a Boba Fett series, and a new Ezra Bridger and Thrawn series, and another new series with a new character. The plan would be to have a show releasing every quarter, and the Game of Thrones series is a big inspiration for this idea, which would very much excite Josh. Dave Filoni would also be overseeing all the shows, which very much excites the rest of us, including Josh. When we hear about this type of connected universe, the first thing that I personally think about is Marvel. Josh and I have talked about this on the show before, and our conclusion was that not everything has to be done in a Marvel way, but that connected story method also makes for great storytelling. So today, with Matt being on the show, I know Matt's a very big Marvel fan, and I wanted to take a deeper dive into this story, what a Star Wars connected universe might look like, and why or why not this idea fits the Star Wars galaxy. So first of all, do we see this as just, kind of a rumor, or do we see this thing actually happening? I tend to fall into a rumor camp, and for a few different reasons. Some of these reasons actually go into an answer for a little bit later, but I really see this as a rumor. I think in some ways it limits their storytelling to a certain degree for things that they could do in other time periods, and especially with other stories coming out soon, specifically High Republic. I kind of see this as more of a rumor for now. Matt, what do you think?
Um, I'm in a little bit of both category. So I agree that this could possibly be a firm rumor. Um, if you're talking about a central story, but I do think that it would be true that they do all these shows and have them tied together um, in one way or another. Um, they don't need to do something that Marvel did with their Netflix shows, with the Defender series, where the Mandalorian and Ahsoka, where they all end up having a season together. I think that in this particular scenario would not work. And that's kind of what I think about when I think of a central story. But as far as all these series tied together with brief cameos, brief um, loose storylines, even just brief mentions of planets, systems, whatnot. I believe that that is probably in the works.
Yeah. I think I think I agree with most of what you said there. I think that if we see something like this, I think it's going to be something like, Ahsoka would theoretically be showing up in this season of Mandalorian, and then she moves on to get her own show. But I don't know if they ever just kind of come back all together, for a story. I
Right.
kind of see it almost as like spin-offs of like 70s and 80s shows, or something like that, where or something like Cheers, where Frasier shows up in Cheers and then later he just gets his own TV show, that type of thing. I think that's what I see this as more, as these characters showing up in a show and then moving on to get their own story and um, their own series. That's kind of what I see happening.
Yeah, I
Um,
mostly see that happening as well.
Yeah, Radio Rebellion. Alberto says in chat that he thinks it's a rumor, but makes sense for the TV series that have been announced. Not good for all of Star Wars, and I think that's where I'm heading with this too. Um, they specifically mentioned Game of Thrones in this rumor, but what effect do we think Marvel has had on these rumors? And then also with that, is Favreau's involvement in Star Wars? As long there's also been that news of Feige getting to work on a film. Do I think that these elements are involved in these rumors floating out there? And absolutely, I do. You have two of the main players in Marvel with Favreau and Feige involved in Star Wars, and I think that the natural uh, knee jerk reaction would be to think, oh, well, they're doing Marvel stuff in Star Wars now, I think that's where a lot of this stuff gets started. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I can agree. In my opinion, both Favreau and Feige are both very useful assets and useful. I hate to use the word tool because they're human beings, but very useful tools as well to enhance your ability to tell stories and to tell storylines, and to help keep it consistent. I think Favreau's and Filoni's involvement in the Mandalorian series um, was fantastic, and they seem to have a good friendship as well. Filoni was a guest on one of Favreau's episodes of the Chef Show on Netflix, and the entire time they talked as friends. They talked as people who were generally interested in the other person's stories to tell.
Right.
Uh, and I think that Favreau can help with his knowledge, and Filoni can also help with his knowledge within Star Wars, but Favreau can help with his knowledge in assembling a very well told story and a very connected story as well. Um, so yeah, with Favreau and Feige being mentioned, and with them being on set, uh, in meetings and everything, that definitely adds fuel to the fire for a connected universe, uh, so to speak.
Yeah. So let's pretend for a minute that this does happen, that this is real. What would this look like in Star Wars? And then, do we think that we've seen the start of this with the first season of Mandalorian, or do we maybe like wrap up that whole Baby Yoda storyline and then move on to this connected story? I I think I would kind of lean to wrapping up the Baby Yoda storyline, even if the child remains with Mando, finding out where he comes from, and then maybe moving on to a different story. But what do you think? Just kind of an idea that I came up with, the kind of blue sky where this story might go.
Um,
You think that maybe like the Baby Yoda story might have implications with Ahsoka? You know, maybe that this is all connected in that way. I don't know.
I would probably lean towards the thought that we've already started to see this
Okay.
quote unquote connected story happen. Um, it could be revolved around the child,
Right.
um, around another creature, uh, that is either force sensitive or one with the
Okay.
force. Um, but where they go from there is really going to be, in my opinion, interesting. Um, the child will live for hundreds of years, so
Right.
uh, you can't really do a whole lot with it right off the bat. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if the child and Ahsoka have a very real connection in this next season, and that could be the actual start to this connected story, this intertwined story amongst, um, all these rumored series coming up.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you think Ahsoka kind of continues on that quest of finding out where the child is from, since maybe that would have some connections to her with her force use and abilities.
Yeah, that sounds very reasonable. You have the Mandalorian continuing to protect the child, but you have Ahsoka uh, doing the detective work, so to speak.
Yeah, I could see that. It'd be interesting. Uh, but with all that said, is a connected set of series what Star Wars actually needs right now? Is this a fad? Is this maybe an attempt to emulate Marvel's success? Or and then do you even think that this is the best approach for companies that aren't Marvel? I'll let you lead this one off. So do you think that this is what Star Wars needs?
Um, so I'm gonna say
You're gonna
I
say
don't
what?
think
Say it.
I don't think Star Wars needs, um, the Marvel plan. Star Wars obviously needs Star Wars plan. Um, it's not a bad idea, in my opinion, to emulate Marvel to see the success they've had, and particularly the film series. Their TV series can leave a little bit to desire as far as how well they work together. Um, but I think each story needs to be its independent story, but having them all connected in one way or another, either deep cuts, as we see in the gallery, the most recent episode of the gallery, or just in your face uh, characters, um, popping up, I really feel like that helps stories and really helps series uh, flow together a lot smoother, a lot better. In my opinion, it gives fan service that you can see these little Easter eggs in one series that were in a previous series, in a previous movie 40 years ago. Like I said, I don't think they need to go the Marvel route, but they need to go the Marvel route, in that having somebody like Dave Filoni as the EP, so he's the person overseeing it, and you had mentioned that earlier.
Right.
He's clearly a fan. He may be the number one fan in the world, uh,
Yeah.
and
I mean, you get to work with George that closely. I think that tends
yeah,
to.
if you have a fan making these stories, in charge of these stories, and then if you have him working with very good directors, very good writers, um, making very good content, uh, that is what I see as like the Marvel way, putting your trust in one person who is very good at what he does, and very good at finding other people that are good at what they do, to make amazing stories that people want to watch and people want to be invested in. Um, that's what I think Star Wars needs right now, because when it's all said and done, what that does is it gives us really good content to watch, really good content to consume, and yearn for more, want for more. So that's my take.
Yeah.
What's
Fair.
yours?
I think it makes sense in a limited capacity. Um, they mentioned like 5 shows, I think, in this rumor, and I think it would make sense for like 2 or 3 shows max. And for this reason, uh, I think it actually does limit what they can tell, and I think that with stories coming out that's already coming out, like the Cassian Andor series and the Kenobi miniseries, um, those aren't really taking place in the right time here for this type of stuff to
Right.
happen. I know that there can be some things, maybe I don't know, maybe they find some sort of object that carries meaning into um, I know that time travel is a thing in Star Wars for whatever reason. Um, I get all that stuff, but it feels to me like if we're connecting the Kenobi series somehow with the Mandalorian, that just feels weird to me, right? Um, and then moving forward, when we start getting things like with the High Republic, especially, that really kind of also limits some stuff that happens there. That takes place like 200 and some years before this stuff. And then, we go even farther back. If they ever want to do anything with the Old Republic, that gets weird too. If they're connecting all of these things together. So in a limited sense, with some of these series, I think that makes a lot of sense. We talked about the Ahsoka stuff. So if the Mandalorian series is somehow tied into this rumored Ahsoka series, I think that makes sense. I think that's perfectly fine. They mentioned Boba Fett, which I don't want to see Boba Fett come back, but if he is back, it makes sense for him to be in this type of connected series, right? I
Right.
just don't want this to be the focus. Kind of like how with Marvel, it's very much the focus. All of these movies connect together in some ways. I just don't want. I don't think that all of Star Wars needs this type of connectivity to make sense, to be good. So that's kind of where I'm at. And then finally, if this is real, how and you already answered some of this, but like how does this really like help Star Wars? How does Star Wars benefit from this? And I think my answer for this is a little bit twofold. I think Star Wars does benefit from this, and the fact that Marvel has such good kind of goodwill built up already, that I think that carries over a little bit already. So I think there's already a little bit of trust built up in this type of model. So I think that helps. And then also having guys like Favreau and Feige already working in the Star Wars universe, and then in Feige's case, wanting to work in the Star Wars universe, I think that helps too. Star Wars is kind of a weird place with it's a weird thing because they're in a weird place with directors, where we have directors leaving projects and things like that. But then we also have some really great directors, and like Bryce Dallas Howard and Deborah Chow and Rick Famuyiwa that are doing things with The Mandalorian that were amazing. Then we still have guys like J.J. Abrams that's probably done with Star Wars, but then Rian Johnson that's still supposed to be coming back for a trilogy. You've got all these great directors, but then you have these guys like Feige and Favreau that are already have that trust built up to do something like this, So I think that Star Wars could benefit from that type of pre-built trust in what Marvel has already done. So, anything to add to that?
I agree to that, and
Okay.
like I said, I think they benefit by putting their trust in someone like Dave Filoni, who, like I said,
Sure.
is
Yeah.
a fan.
Yeah.
I think the worst thing that you can do is put somebody in charge who isn't first and foremost a fan of the product. So I think with doing that and then giving him a team to work around, and even if he just oversees these 4 or 5 upcoming series, I think that helps just cement the storytelling experience. And then if you have other people in charge of the Kenobi series, I don't know who's going to be EPing that, or the High Republic, or if they ever do an Old Republic, or any other storyline they tell. I think first and foremost, they really need to have a knowledgeable fan.
Yeah.
In charge of it.
Sure. Yeah, and then that's what.
So I think that, I think if they continue the trend of doing that, even if the stories aren't connected in a logical way, I think they'll still be connected in the fact that they'll be very good stories and very easy stories to consume.
Yeah, I think that's the main key for me. What you just said with just being connected by having good stories.
Yeah,
I think that's the connection that I was, in a roundabout way, getting at. I just want these stories to be good. I want them to be remembered just because they were good. And
right.
Some of these can fit together, obviously, but I think that's
some of them can fit together as far as storylines go.
Yeah, right.
But they all, in my opinion, need to be connected in a way of good storytelling.
Yeah, I can totally get behind that way of saying it. Cool. Well, you ready to wrap up our episode here?
Yeah, let's do it.
I'm just glad you're here. At the end.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It was a little bit of a light week in chat today, which was perfectly fine. It gave me a little bit of a break, kind of catch up and catch my breath. We had Alberto from Radio Rebellion chatting with us today, so thank you, Alberto, for stopping by, hanging out with us. If you are just watching here, if you're just listening later, make sure you subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. We're on most major ones, including iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, a lot of other ones as well. If you're on one of those platforms that lets you leave a review, please do so. That helps us to reach more people and have more people find out what we're doing here. Check out the website from a certain point of view.com. We've had a few blog articles up this week, so be sure to head on over there and check those out. Our socials, Twitter is Certain POV Pod. Facebook is From a Certain Point of View. Discord server link is always in the show notes and on the website as well. Email is certainpovpod@gmail.com. We are hosted by anchor.fm, where you can send us a 60-second voicemail if you have a question, if you'd like to get some extra input on anything that we said on the show this week or any of our past shows. Send that to us on Anchor. Remember, we are part of the Red 5 Network, which is an awesome group of really great podcasts, all kinds of different walks of different interests on these podcasts. One thing that connects them all together is that they can talk about things and disagree and still be friends about it. But make sure you check out red5network.com for all those other shows. Matt, do you have anything you want to plug here? This is your time.
Not particularly.
Okay,
if
great.
you feel the need to... Oh, awesome.
No, go for it. I'm just messing with you.
The second time you've done that to me. Maybe that can be our reoccurring gag.
Yeah.
If you want to follow nothing on the internet, then my Twitter and my Instagram handles are Gauze1289. Like Adam mentioned earlier, I'm still on my social media blackout. So like I said, if you want to follow me and see me post nothing at the moment, then by all means, Gauze1289.
Yeah, you're doing social media right these days, I think. For me, I am on Twitter at thegauze85. I am also writing a little bit here and there. I am writing on our blog as well, like I mentioned. I'm also writing on my other Disney Center blog, which is called DizTech. That's where I talk about Disney and technology. So there's a few things going on right now in that realm with Disney getting ready to reopen and figuring out apps and reservations and all this other stuff. So been chatting about that on DizTech, so you can check me out over there. I had a lot of fun chatting up Star Wars this week with you, Matt. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Kind of a cool little brother episode here. So thanks for hanging out here. And you listen to the show, so you should know the sign off here, but I'm going to test you here. So just remember that everything that Matt and I told you this week was true.
From a certain point of view.
That's the first time I haven't said that. All right. I think that'll do it.
That'll do, pig.
That'll do, pig. That'll do.
Ugh, we're going to get a bad storm here.
Is it warm over there?
Warm?
Yeah. It's pretty warm here.
I don't know. I haven't stepped outside at all today. It's 86.
Yeah, it's a little warmer than here. We haven't had a really good storm in a couple weeks, I don't think, here.
We haven't had one in a few weeks, but the last one we had was a doozy.
Yeah.
It knocked down probably like 12 trees in our neighborhood, at least.
Jeez. Hi,
Tanya's
Tanya.
Hi. Adam says hi.
You're live on YouTube, Tanya.
You're live on YouTube. Oh. She says cool.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm actually going to sign off. I'm going to go lay down for a little bit, and then I think we're eating some hotheads tonight. So.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go. We wanted to go to the baby store and the paint store. So we should probably go now before we get too wet. Or maybe we should wait so we don't get too wet. It's a weird game we're going to play right now.
All right. Well, good luck with that.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks for joining me. Thanks, everyone in chat, for hanging out. We will come at you again live next week, next Saturday at 2 p.m. And until then, may the Force be with you.